There was a time, not so very long ago, when farm families did brutally hard physical work from before dawn until after dark, 6 days a week, in every weather, year after year, and they were strong as oxen and healthy into old age. And they did it eating foods that have almost entirely vanished from the modern table. Foods that most folks today have never tasted and couldn't name. Foods that were the very backbone of what made those people strong. And today I'm going to give you 9 of them, one by one, the forgotten foods that built our families. Some of them are still in my own kitchen every week, and I'll tell you honestly what each one really does and doesn't do, because I'll not sell you a miracle. So let me get right into it. Let me give you the thread that runs through all 9 first, because it's the thing that actually matters. Every one of these foods has 3 things in common. They're whole, meaning nothing was stripped out of them. They're nourishing in a dense, concentrated way, meaning a small amount carries a great deal of what a body needs. And they're cheap or free, made from what a family already had, often from the very parts that folks today throw in the trash. That's the real secret of the old strength, and it isn't any single magic food. It's that our people ate the whole of everything, wasted nothing, and got a density of nourishment out of humble scraps that the modern diet, for all its abundance, simply doesn't deliver. Now let me give you the 9. The first is bone broth, and it's the one I'd put above all the others. When the meat's been eaten, most folks throw the bones away. My people never did. Those bones go in a big pot with water and a splash of vinegar to help draw the goodness out, and they simmer low and slow for the better part of a day, sometimes longer. And what comes out is a rich, deep, golden broth that has drawn the goodness right out of the bones and the joints and the marrow, full of minerals and the collagen from the connective tissue that turns to jelly when it cools, which is how you know you've done it right. That broth was the foundation of the old kitchen. It went into every soup, every stew, every gravy, every pot of beans. It was drunk from a mug when a body was ailing or worn down. It's warming and deeply nourishing and easy on the stomach when nothing else will sit right. And it cost nothing at all, because it was made from the very bones we'd have thrown out. That's the old way in a single pot. Take the waste, simmer it a day, and get the most nourishing thing in the house. The second is lard and the good animal fats. And I know this one will make some folks uneasy, but hear me out. My people cooked with lard, rendered from their own pigs, and with the drippings and the tallow and the butter from their own cows, and they were not sick, weak people. Fat was never feared in the old kitchen. It was prized, because fat is what carries a body through hard, cold work, giving lasting energy that doesn't leave you shaking and hungry an hour later. It makes food satisfying, so you eat, and you're genuinely full, and you stay full. It carries flavor, and it carries certain vitamins that your body can't use without it. And it was free, rendered at butchering time from the animal you already had. Now, I'll be honest with you and say that fat is a subject people argue about fiercely, and I'm no doctor, and I'll not tell you what your diet ought to be. What I will tell you plainly is that our people ate these fats freely while doing enormous physical labor and thrived, and that the fear of all fat that swept through the modern world came and went and came again, and that whole foods eaten in the sensible whole diet served our families very well. Take that for what it's worth, and speak to your own doctor about your own health. The third is organ meat, and this is the most forgotten of them all. When an animal was butchered, the liver, the heart, the kidneys, all of it was eaten, and it was often considered the best part, save for the ones who needed strength most. And here's the plain fact about it. Organ meat is the single most nutrient-dense food there is. Liver especially. It's packed with iron and vitamins and goodness in a concentration that no muscle meat comes close to. A body that ate liver regularly simply did not lack for iron or the things liver carries. And it was cheap or free because it came with the animal. The modern world threw it out, decided it was peasant food, and lost the most nourishing thing on the whole carcass. My people never stopped eating it, and there's a reason our old folks were strong. The fourth is sauerkraut and the fermented foods. That great crock of cabbage salted and left to work, turning into something sharp and tangy that keeps all winter. And it does 2 remarkable things. It's alive, full of the good bacteria that ferment it, which are good for the digestion and the gut in ways that are genuinely well-founded. And it holds its vitamins right through the winter, so a family had real living vegetables in February when nothing green grew and nothing came up from far away. That's a big part of how folks stayed well through the long, cold months. A crock of cabbage and salt costing pennies, feeding a family living food all winter. The fifth is whole grain bread, real bread, and I mean the actual whole grain, not the pale fluffy stuff. Our bread was made from grain with everything still in it, the bran and the germ and all, ground and baked into a dense, chewy, substantial loaf that stuck to your ribs and carried you through a morning's work. Compare that to the modern white bread, where the bran and germ, which is to say all the nourishment and all the fiber, have been stripped out and thrown away to make it white and soft and shelf-stable, leaving a food that fills you for an hour and gives you very little. That stripping out was one of the great quiet losses in the history of eating. Our people ate the whole grain, and it fed them. The sixth is raw milk and the whole dairy, the cream and the butter and the good cheese from a family's own cow. Whole milk, nothing taken out, rich and full and nourishing, and the butter and cream that came from it. Now I must speak plainly and carefully here, because raw milk carries real risks of serious illness, particularly for children and the elderly and the frail, and I'd never tell you to drink it without understanding that honestly and making your own careful, informed choice. That's a serious matter, and the laws differ from place to place besides. But the whole point stands, that the old dairy was whole and full and nourishing, and my people were strong on it. The seventh is dried beans and the humble legumes, sacks of them in every pantry, cheap as dirt, keeping near forever, and full of protein and fiber and good sustaining nourishment. A pot of beans with a piece of ham and an onion fed a whole family for pennies and kept them going through a hard day's work. There's not a cheaper, more nourishing, more dependable food on this earth, and it's the food that's carried working people through every hard time in history. The eighth is eggs, whole eggs, yolk and all. Our hens laid them, and we ate them, and we never once threw the yolk away, which is a thing I still can't quite believe folks do. The yolk is where nearly all the goodness is, all the vitamins, all the richness, all the nourishment sits right there in the yellow, and folks throw it out and eat the white and think they're doing themselves a favor. A whole egg is one of the most complete, most nourishing, cheapest foods there is, and it comes from a hen in your own yard eating your own scraps. And the ninth is honey, raw honey, and the whole food's sweetness. When our people wanted something sweet, they had honey from their own hives, or maple syrup from their own trees, or fruit from their own trees, and that was all. Not much of it, mind. Sweetness was a treat and not a constant. But it was whole, real, unrefined, from the land, and it came with its own goodness in it. Compare that to a modern diet where refined sugar is in everything, all day, in quantities the old folks would have found unimaginable. That difference alone, whole, sparing sweetness versus constant refined sugar, may be the single biggest dietary difference between them and us. Let me linger on that broth pot a moment, because it's worth understanding properly. You take the bones, and it can be any bones, the chicken carcass after Sunday dinner, the ham bone, the beef bones from the butchering, and into the big pot they go. A splash of vinegar in the water, which the old folks knew helps draw the minerals out of the bone and into the broth. Then whatever vegetable ends you've saved, the onion skins, the carrot tops, the celery ends, the bits you'd have thrown out, in they go too, so even the scraps of the scraps get used. And then it simmers, low and slow, at the back of the stove where the fire's always going anyway, for hours and hours, sometimes all day and into the night, and the whole house smells of it, and when it's done and strained and cooled, it sets up like jelly, and that jelly is the proof that you've pulled the collagen right out of those bones. That broth went into everything. It stretched a little meat across a big family. It made a pot of beans into a meal. It was the first thing given to anyone who was ailing, warm in a mug, easy to keep down when nothing else would stay. And I'll say it again because it matters. It cost absolutely nothing. It was made entirely of what would otherwise have gone to the pigs or the pile. That's the old genius in one pot. And let me tell you what a working day's eating actually looked like, so you can see how these 9 fit together, for they weren't eaten separately as some list of health foods. They were simply the food. Breakfast before dawn was heavy, and it had to be. Eggs from the hens, fried in lard, potatoes or mush from the whole cornmeal, thick slices of that dense whole grain bread with real butter, maybe bacon or scrapple, and coffee. That was a breakfast built to carry a body through 5 hours of hard labor before the next meal. And it did. Dinner in the middle of the day was the big one. Meat and potatoes and vegetables put up from the garden, beans, more of that bread, gravy made on the broth, and pie if it was a good day. Supper in the evening was lighter, soup made on the broth, bread and butter, kraut, cheese, whatever was about. And in between there wasn't snacking because you weren't hungry, because the food you'd eaten was dense and fatty and whole, and it actually held you. That's the thing folks miss. It isn't just what was on the plate, it's that the plate held you for 5 hours of hard work, and the modern plate doesn't hold you for 2. Let me say a bit more about the organ meats too, since it's the one folks most resist. And I understand why, because I know it's not the fashion. But consider how strange the modern position really is. An animal gives its life to feed a family, and we take the muscle and throw away the very organs that carry the most nourishment in the whole creature. That's both wasteful and, if you think on it, a bit disrespectful to the animal. The old folks would have found it shocking. In our kitchens, the liver was fried with onions, and it was a proper meal that folks looked forward to. The heart was cooked and eaten, and it's just muscle, honestly, and good. The rest went into scrapple and puddings and sausage, mixed in with everything else so that not a scrap was lost. And the families that ate that way did not suffer the lack of iron and the tiredness that so many folks complain of now. There's a lesson in that, and it's sitting in the butcher's discard bin, cheap as anything, waiting for somebody to remember what it's worth. And it's worth asking how these 9 foods vanished from the table, because it tells you something. They didn't disappear because anyone proved them wrong. They disappeared because they weren't profitable. There's no money in a broth made from bones you'd have thrown away. No money in liver that cost pennies. No money in a crock of cabbage and salt. No money in beans by the sack. But there's a great deal of money in taking the goodness out of a grain and selling you the white part cheap and the bran back to you separately, and in selling you a box of something engineered in a factory, and in putting sugar into everything so you keep coming back. So the humble, free, whole, nourishing foods were quietly pushed aside as old-fashioned and poor folks' food, and the profitable ones took the table. That's not a conspiracy. It's just what a market does. But the result is that we've been steadily talked out of the cheapest and most nourishing food available to us and into the dearest and thinnest, and we were made to feel modern for it. My people simply never got talked out of it. That's really the only difference. Now let me be the honest neighbor, because I promised you I would, and there are things here I'd be wrong to let stand unsaid. First, none of these 9 foods is a magic cure, and none of them will fix a body on its own. Anyone who tells you one food cures anything is selling something. These are good, whole, nourishing foods, and that's a real thing worth having. But it's not magic, and I'll not dress it up as such. Second, I've got to be honest about the old days themselves, because it would be a lie to paint them as some golden age of perfect health. Folks in those days died of things we cure easily now. There were hard years and hungry years and lean winters when families genuinely went short. Children died of illnesses that a doctor would shrug at today. The old folks were strong, but they were not immortal, and a great deal of what makes us healthier now, the medicine and the sanitation and the plenty, is real and good, and I'd not trade it back. So when I say these foods made our people strong, I mean exactly that and no more. Their diet was good. Their diet was not everything. Third, I'm no doctor, and this isn't medical advice. And folks' bodies and needs and conditions differ enormously. If you've a health condition, or you're on medicines, or you're pregnant, or you're managing something, talk to your doctor about your diet rather than taking a stranger's word for it. And some of these foods want real care, the raw milk especially, as I said, and the organ meats should come from sound animals and be handled and cooked properly. With that honesty on the table, let me tell you what I truly believe is the lesson of all 9, because it's simpler than folks want it to be. It was never about any one food. It was about the pattern. Our people ate whole foods with nothing stripped out of them. They ate the entire animal and the entire plant, wasting nothing, which meant they got the dense nourishment that lives in the parts folks now discard. They ate almost nothing that came from a factory. They ate very little refined sugar. And they ate food that they or their neighbors had grown and raised themselves, so they knew exactly what was in it, which was nothing but the food itself. That's the whole pattern, and there's not a fad or a supplement or a product in it anywhere. Just whole food, wasting nothing, made at home. And notice, as always, that the pattern was cheap. Every single one of these 9 is either free or nearly free. Bones you'd have thrown out, fat from your own animal, organs nobody else wanted, cabbage and salt, grain you grew, milk from your cow, beans by the sack, eggs from your own hens, honey from your own bees. The most nourishing diet those families could have eaten was also the cheapest one available to them, made from what they had and what others discarded. That's worth sitting with in an age where folks are told that eating well means buying expensive things. And let me add one more honest word about the work, because it's the piece of this that no food can replace. Our people were strong in large part because they worked hard, physically, every single day, from dawn till dark, walking and lifting and swinging and hauling. That labor built the strength as much as the food did, and I'd be a liar to give the credit all to the plate. The food was what made that labor possible, and the labor was what made the bodies. You can eat every one of these 9 foods perfectly and sit all day and you won't be strong like those old folks were, because the movement was half of it. So take the food, yes, but take the whole pattern, and understand that a body wants to be used, and that the strength our great-grandparents had came from a life of using their bodies well and fueling them properly. The two went together, and neither one worked alone. So here's what I'd leave you with. You needn't take up all 9 tomorrow, and some may not fit your life or your health at all. But pick one. Save your bones next time and make a pot of broth, and see for yourself what comes out of what you'd have thrown away. Eat the whole egg. Buy the whole grain instead of the stripped white. Put a crock of kraut down. Cook a pot of beans. Cut back hard on the refined sugar, which is the biggest single thing on this whole list. Just one to start, and let it lead to the next. Because in the end, our people weren't strong because they knew some secret food that's been hidden from you. They were strong because they ate whole, real, honest food, wasted nothing, and got their nourishment from the humble parts everyone now throws away. That's not a secret at all. It's just been forgotten. And every single bit of it is waiting for you to pick back up, starting with the bones in your own trash can tonight. If this is the kind of honest, practical old wisdom you've been hungry for, the kind that makes you capable and self-reliant and connects you back to the good sense of those who came before, then stay here with me. There's so much more where this came from, and I aim to bring it back to you, one piece at a time, always honestly. Subscribe, and we'll keep remembering the old ways together, because some of the most valuable things we ever knew are the simple ones we let ourselves forget. And the plain, whole food that built our families is surely one of them.